And Mr. Dowdy, we are ready.
Good evening. Welcome to the District 225 Board of Education meeting. Madam Secretary, would you please read the roll?
Mr. Dowdy.
Here.
Mr. Glowacki.
Present.
Ms. Mullenbeck.
Here.
Mr. O'Hara.
Here.
Ms. Siegwin.
Here.
Mr. Schein.
Present.
Dr. Steinberg.
Here.
We'll go to item 2 on our agenda, which is a motion to approve the agenda for this meeting.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 7-0.
Good evening, everybody. It's great to see so many folks here this evening. We are well up and running, heading toward March, and spring break isn't too far away on this. This evening, we will have a relatively straightforward but exciting agenda. We'll have our typical opening with community comment, though I think we're going to not have that tonight. Our board and superintendent reports on our consent agenda. Then we'll have five items on our regular agenda. The first are curriculum improvement reports, which I believe is the reason for most of you here with us tonight, which we greatly appreciate. Textbook changes, Chromebook purchase, release procedures, and an update on our strategic planning process, which is ongoing. Thank you all for joining us this evening. We also appreciate everyone taking the time to be part of our meeting. Item 3 on our agenda is our recognition of community visitors. As I noted, we do not appear to have any tonight, but we always emphasize how important it is to get input from the community, whether it's here at the board or with via email or phone calls or finding one of us. We are always open to hear your thoughts. It's how we stay in touch and we learn, so we always appreciate the input very, very much. Item 4 on our agenda are the board and superintendent reports. Dr. Johns.
Thank you, Mr. Dowdy. I'll keep my comments pretty brief, and then I'll pass it over to the principals so they can share the updates of what's happening in the buildings. Recently, I've had the pleasure of attending a lot of major events that we've had. It's the end of our winter season, but at the same time, we've had the 2 variety shows, and then we're starting the spring season. So you may have seen lacrosse warming up out on the field over here at South. But we've also had a bunch of track meets. And after seeing all these events, you realize how wonderful we have it in the Glenbrooks, where our students are showcasing their tremendous talents. But it also gave me pause, particularly at V Show, but also at the track meets of how much our staff puts in this time of year and the sacrifices they're making. They're away from their families for long nights, long days, and many of them, and really grateful that our staff work so hard and commit so much dedication to make sure that we have opportunities for our students to showcase such a wide range of their talents and their passions. Of course, I'd be remiss if I didn't thank the parents too, who make it all happen to help the kids initiate where their passions may be and provide for support, nourishment, and transportation. We've really come off of a week of just tremendous things happening in our schools, and it's just been a treat to watch. To give us some of those details, I'll start off with Dr. Scott, who will share just a few things at North of the great things that have been happening.
Yeah, Charles, one thing I talked to John Catalano on the opening day of spring sports, and he said this is the first time in a long time he was able to get everyone outside. So he was elated, to say the least. I talked to you last time about our speech team, and we came back with 3 championships, both in radio speaking, in original oratory, and 6th place in dramatic interpretation. Over the weekend, also, we had 24 members of the math team compete in the ICTM Regional Math Contest. That's the equivalent of in sports, a sectional competition. And for a state record for the 44th consecutive year, GBN has qualified their entire team to the state finals. I thought that was pretty awesome. GBN took first in 7 of the 10 events and second in the other 3. So quite a sweep there. They're looking to go downstate in April, hoping for a championship there. In our pictures, sorry. Yeah, thank you. Ariella Dobin continued her quest to be state place finisher in girls wrestling. She finished 4th place and earned all state honors. There's a picture of her up there on the podium. And our boys basketball were IHSA regional champs. And this is where I get to pass the baton to Barb, because I think the last time I had both teams up here, I was able to kind of post that winning shot.
So yes, our GBS basketball team won their 5th consecutive regional championship on Friday night, beating a very tough Maine South 67-40. So the Titans will be playing in the sectional semifinal against Glenbrook North tomorrow night at Maine South, 7:45 p.m. We will see all of you there. We also have more in athletics. Freshman Allie Metis competed at the state gymnastics meet as one of only 3 freshmen amongst the 41 gymnasts who were competing. Allie placed 10th on the bars and 10th on all around, and we look forward to 3 more years of Allie vying for state honors. Our boys swim team competed in the IHSA state meet. And I just have to comment on Henry Chen. He finished a great career at GBS by ending up in the top 10 all time in GBS history times in the 200 free, 100 free, and 500 free. And in the athletes with disabilities division, Ryan Edelman won all 4 of his races and set a state record in the 200 free. So congratulations to our boys swimmers on a great season. Over in academics, this past Saturday, senior Yoon Oh was recognized at the Skokie Valley Daughters of the American Revolution chapter for winning their Good Citizen Essay Contest. There were 5 good citizens from the chapter's neighboring high schools, which included GBS, Loyola, Niles North, Niles West, New Trier, and Yoon's essay and application were judged to be the very best. And then finally, I agree with Dr. Johns. It was an absolutely phenomenal V show. I hope all of you got to see it. I'd really like to give a shout out and thanks to the over 300 students who volunteered to put their talents on the stage for us to enjoy. They went through a grueling month of sometimes 12, 13-hour days of practice, but none of that would be possible without the phenomenal staff who make everything behind the scenes possible. We have 9 staff members at GBS who commit endless hours to helping our students show their talents on stage. So incredibly grateful, incredibly grateful.
All right, thank you. That's the update. Thank you, Mr. Dowdy.
Thank you for that wonderful update. It's always inspiring. Board members, anything you want to share this evening? Mr. Shine, anything you want to share?
No, thank you.
Okay, well, thank you again for those wonderful reports. We move to item 5 on our agenda, our consent agenda. Dr. Johnson, are there any changes?
The only changes I want to address, we made some language changes per the board conversation related to policies. I've identified those in the packet. Just cleaned up some language.
But they were consistent with our discussion.
Consistent with the conversation.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, any questions on that? Okay, I will entertain a motion.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none?
Mr. Dowdy?
Yes.
Mr. Glowacki?
Yes.
Ms. Mullenbeck?
Yes.
Mr. O'Hara?
Yes.
Ms. Siegwin?
Yes.
Mr. Shine?
Yes.
Dr. Steinberg?
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
Item 6 on our agenda is our regular discussion and action agenda. Mentioned earlier, there are 5 items. We're beginning with item 6.1, which is a very important curriculum improvement report. This is a critical part of everything we do, and that's why all of you are here and you work with so many wonderful colleagues. It's the center of our focus for our students to continue to learn on so many fronts, and we're always excited to hear from you. This evening, I want, first of all, to just tell you how much we appreciate all the efforts that went into these presentations. We know that they are going to be focused, but at the same time, we know there's a lot behind them, and it's hugely important to us and to all of our students and our families, all the hard work that goes into it. Just so people are aware, we're going to do this basically in two cohorts tonight. We're going to have the first group, which Mr. Bredag is going to describe momentarily. They're going to each present for 2 or 3 minutes each, I think, some slides, and then we're going to have questions board at that point, and then we'll move to the second cohort and we'll do the same. We're just looking forward to it very much. Dr. Johns, anything you want to add at this point?
No, I think you covered the high part. This is part of our regular process that we go through. It enables us to make sure that we are offering a top-notch academic program for our students. And the way you do that is to commonly assess, regularly assess what's working and what can be added and what can be adjusted. This process is completed by our teachers across the district, led by our instructional supervisors who are with us this evening, and also orchestrated by the associate principals at each building, the director of special education, and of course, Mr. Bredag, our director of teaching and learning. So you look ready to go. Mr. Bredag, take it away.
Absolutely. Well, thank you. As both of you alluded to, this is a wonderful opportunity for us to share what I think is how are all these topics we talk about at the board level and at the district level actually coming to life in the building. You hear words like pathways or multi-tiered system of support. You've heard about school links. We talk about these things, and now you get an opportunity to hear from the people that are making it happen. So tonight you're going to hear from 2 different groups. Group 1 is starting their new curriculum improvement process. These can range from 1 to 3 years. Then you'll hear an update from those that started their process last year. So they're in year 2 of their curriculum improvement process. Just as a reminder, this is something we reviewed and revamped our curriculum improvement process roughly 3 years ago, or we began the process of revamping it 3 years ago. This is the second year of that process, and we continue to refine it and improve upon it. One thing you're going to notice tonight, and I want you to pay real close attention, is that through the work of the ISs, they talked about the need to continue to build the collaborative spirit across Willow Road. So you'll see that your science departments together, your English departments together. Sometimes you'll see that they have a similar curriculum improvement process. Sometimes they are different, but you'll see the connections between the two. And we really wanted to highlight that after they spoke about that importance to continue the collaborative spirit of the work across the district. So real excited for you to hear about that. And to kick it off, we're gonna just kind of sit here and flow. The science departments are going to start us through, and in about 12 to 13 minutes, we will take questions and answers. So.
Thank you, Ryan. So I'm Mary Rocker. I'm from the science department at GVN, and we focused on this year, our department is focusing a lot on career exploration. One of the reasons is because we have such a rigorous menu of courses available to students, and we want to ensure that students have access and they can make purposeful and thoughtful course selections. This also supports the district work that is related to career and college exploration, and one of the newest House bills for Illinois House Bill, which is also about careers and pathways. So so we have started doing some research, and we're aiming at seeking a fresh approach for students to look at our courses. And we thought this was a great way to educate families and students. It's hard to come in as a 14-year-old, and of course you don't know what you want to be when you grow up, but by offering some career umbrellas for courses, both in the science department and outside the science department, students and their families can make thoughtful decisions with regards to core courses as well as electives. Our goal is to guide thoughtful course selection, helping students build their own pathways, which will eventually align with the district career pathways. And we are working to identify courses that support STEM careers and careers outside of our department. So for example, if a student is interested in policy writing, environmental science might be a great option for them to take. If a student is interested in aviation or professional pilot, earth science might be a great course to take. And these are some things that as a 14 or 15-year-old, as an entering freshman, you might not be aware of. And as a family, you might not be aware of unless you've been exposed to that in your own personal life. So we are looking forward to researching further, looking at the pathways that are available through the, that are identified by the district. And then hopefully next year we'll have a nice robust career pathway in all different realms for you next year.
Thank you, Mary. I'm Jeff Rylander at the IS for Science at South. A significant focus for Science at South is really responding to our growing multilingual population. The multilingual population at South has expanded from 3% to 11% over the last 7 years. And to translate that into real kids, that's about 300 students that qualify for multilingual services at South. One of the very best ways we think to support multilingual learners, especially as they develop a technical vocabulary or as they develop the skills in unique content areas such as science, is to offer a multilingual pathway through science. Multilingual courses that reflect our standard science curriculum, we believe really also enhance our students' sense of belonging and honor the dignity of our multicultural, multilingual students, goals that we have for our students at South. So in light of that, we're excited to re-envision our multilingual science sequence for the 24-25 school year. The current sequence is 2 multilingual courses, but the new sequence expands to 3 courses for really 2 reasons. One, to reflect the needs of this growing population, as I mentioned, but also really to better align these to our standard core courses that we offer in science. And in addition to expanded support, we really see this accelerating the growth of our multilingual learners. We have measures that we look to, the access test, the Illinois Science Assessment, and other measures that we're excited to see their progress. And this will allow really for a seamless transition of our multilingual students to our general education science courses as soon as they are ready to do so. So we begin the sequence next fall and look forward to sharing an update with you next year.
Thank you very much. I'm Bob Pieper, IS of PE Health and Driver Ed at Glenbrook North. Josh's phone keeps going off, so. Our year 1 goal is and focus is technology and data collection. So this is something we've been working on, but we're really going to focus here on year 1 on that. And we're really going to try to collect, analyze, and act to improve our curriculum. And that will be in year 2, and Josh will explain that a little bit more. So our focus is relevant to best practices in education, and specifically as it relates to the content area. We made our connection to a district-wide lens of data-informed practices and ongoing well-being work, which we're going to continue on. This says PE, but we're going to continue on with driver ed and health as well with our well-being for our students.
All right, and I'm Josh Stanton, the instructional supervisor of PE Driver and Health at Glenbrook South. It's a pleasure to be in your presence tonight. So kind of shifting to the story of the work and or why we are at this place and why we feel this is important. Essentially, each and every year, all of our students within PE have to participate in mandated state fitness testing, which assesses essentially all of their different health-related components of fitness. So that ranges from flexibility, cardiovascular endurance, muscular strength, so on and so forth. In the past, we've had access to this data, but we feel that assessing it and providing tangible real-time results to students will help them better access and grasp their own learning, make individual improvements and strides to live longer and healthier lives. Our goals with this, again, is to improve student comprehension, the learning process overall, and how to help students achieve their own individual fitness goals. Moving forward with this data collection, it's really a three-prong approach or 3 steps that we have to look forward to. So first and foremost, where we currently are, continuing to conduct the baseline data, midterm testing, as well as post-testing to accumulate as much data as we possibly can. Then we will analyze this data and act upon it to not only provide tangible feedback to students, but to measure gains across our PE curriculum. And finally, we want to assess that data in terms of deficiencies to align our curricular models and improve our methodologies moving forward.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Anna Schultes, Instructional Supervisor of English at Glenbrook North. The focus of the curriculum improvement process for both Glenbrook North and Glenbrook South English departments are changes to our senior year course offerings. We decided to focus on this work in order to help students prepare for success in their post-secondary endeavors, but also to offer students more choices when it comes to determining their learning pathways.
And then hello, good evening, David Adamji, IS of English at GBS. Pleasure to be here. The connections are twofold. I think we have kind of district level connections and then building level connections. The district level connections, naturally the updating senior course offerings will lead to an increase in access to various pathways. And naturally, as a district initiative right now, that's a clear link. And then the building level, you know, both buildings are spending a good bit of time thinking about sense of belonging in our students and offering more choices, and access to pathways is in line with that work. The story of the work is pretty straightforward. I think at the beginning of the year when we learned a little bit more about the district initiatives for thinking about the college and career pathways we're providing, we naturally then started thinking about revisiting our senior course offerings and thinking about how we can make those offerings a bit more in line with pathway options.
And we subsequently brought Not yet. Thank you. We subsequently brought this work to our curricular teams, to our departments, and we are excited that there's commitment on the part of our teachers to revisit senior year curricular maps in order to proceed with this work. So in terms of next steps, we would like to get a head start in the spring and then continue the work in summer workshops of adapting our curricular maps to semester offerings and building the English 101 dual credit curriculum. We hope that in the fall of next school year, so 24-25, we can finalize the curricular mapping portion of the work and propose a new offering to you here, to the board.
And then by 2025-26 school year, hopefully running at least one dual credit offering, and then increasing, hopefully having some additional semester long electives.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Doug Strong, Instructional Supervisor for Special Education at Glenbrook off campus, and I get to talk to you about the most exciting part of tonight, and that is new special education software. Our new program, Power School Special Programs, continues to evolve to meet the needs of a district to best support students who qualify for special education services.
Hi, I'm Stacy Wolf. I'm the Assistant Director for Specialized Services and Programs. Also playing the role of Kathy French tonight. I asked the GBN who could not be with us. So we're just over the 1-year mark in terms of transitioning into this new platform. And by the end of this school year, all of our individualized education plans will be created and finalized within our system. This allows for ease not only in data access and information, it also helps to support our information sharing with our general education teachers, with fellow special education teachers, and also with our families through direct portals.
Hi, I'm Bridget Buckland. I'm the Instructional Supervisor for Special Education at Glenbrook South. It's nice to be here. What is really exciting, I think, about our next steps for special programs is we are going to be focusing on using the parent portal feature. So it's something that we are kind of figuring out the best ways to implement in our buildings. And our intention is that this will help increase parent access through the sharing of digital files, but also digital signatures, so that we really can make sure that the sort of paperwork side of things is not a barrier to families and is not, you know, contributing to any delays in services or communication. So we're really excited about working on that and being able to roll that out to families soon.
Okay, we've reached a point where you've heard roughly 15 months of work in less than, I think, 16 or 17 minutes. So with that, do you have questions for the fine folks in front of you?
So, Mr. Bretag, first of all, very impressive to get things into 16 minutes or 17 minutes. And we appreciate the focus that you put into all these things. I wanted to say a couple of things and open this up to my colleagues. The collaborative process you're going through, not just across schools, but within your departments is very impressive and is consistent with how we want to work, because we have so many wonderful minds on either side of Willow Road and within each building, and to see the sharing going on is exactly what we want, because you can learn from each other so much. So we really appreciate that. It is exciting to hear how forward-looking this is. It's consistent with, and we'll hear this in our strategic planning, about planning for post-secondary pathways, whether it's in careers or any other sorts of areas, college. This kind of planning is really, really important to our families, and it's something you'll be hearing about as we go forward with our strategic plan. So thank you for those efforts. They're highly consistent with things that matter heavily to our district. I love the innovation and the engagement and the inclusiveness of the Mr. Violander. You mentioned the multilingual learning going on in science, being attentive to our population and making sure that all of our students are engaged wherever they're coming from, whatever their basis is. That kind of ethos is central to our continuing excellence in this district, as well as our evolution with technology and the demographics of our population. So thank you. And lastly, I just want to mention the use of data and portals that we heard in PE and special ed. Again, taking advantage of technology in a way that benefits our students earlier. We're doing this in all sorts of ways across our district. We've heard recent presentations about this, and we really are glad to see you taking advantage of this. Access to having families much more involved. They want data. They trust everyone, but when they get data, they can be that much more supportive. We have a wonderful history in this district of families being supportive and our communities being supportive. And so being open and helpful, we can help each other and do the most for our students. So thank you for all of these efforts that we've talked about. I'm going to now open up to my colleagues in a moment here, but just thank you very much for the presentations. So I'll start with Ms. Mellenbuck. Do you have things you want to raise?
It was great to get a report back on everything that you've been doing. I remember coming to the meetings in the spring of last year and hearing how it was just starting up. So this is terrific to have a little, update on everything. I did have a couple of specific questions. Bruce alluded to this, both with the GBN science portion, and then also I think for English overall. It sounds like there's a lot of exploration of how to make the curriculum track better with what students need for different career pathways, whether that be college or trade schools or other things. And I'm just curious to understand, to what extent has the college counseling offices been involved in this process, or to what extent have they been able to feed in what they know about what students are asking for, what they think, what gaps might be, and have you been able to react to that at all?
So while they're changing the microphone, I'll make a couple of quick comments. Overall, as a district, we are, in fact, tomorrow, we have our quarterly meeting, which brings together the curriculum team, all the ISs here, and our counselors, as well as our college counselors, to have those conversations. Today was another meeting, in fact, in which we were talking very much about large scale alignment, what that would mean, what would that mean from a college perspective and a career perspective. So while your question is specific to these four departments, overall as a district, it's work that is ongoing right now and very much is When we talk about ed services, that's part of that unification that we're really bringing together student services and our curriculum team, because that's going to be the best for our students.
So I can share GBN Science isn't, we're not proposing any new electives. We have a really robust menu of elective courses, but we tend to advertise, I guess, for the lack of a better word, or market our courses as science classes, English classes, social studies classes, instead of more interdisciplinary. And how can all students be science students? So if you tend to be, like I use the policy, someone who's interested in political science, a student thinks maybe science isn't their thing, but then if we advertise or market our classes to our students as, if you're interested in policy writing, environmental science, they actually have a unit on policy writing. So, and those students and families just might not be aware of the interdisciplinary pieces that fit together. When we did we call it an elective extravaganza, it got adjusted this year because of the cold day. And so that actually gave us a really quick way to have the opportunity to kind of rewrite how we presented our classes. And what's really nice is we were able to talk about how physics, you could be an astrophysicist if you take physics, or you can apply physics to construction. So we looked at just a variety of different classes or a variety of different careers and how they related to our classes, just to kind of entice students and spark their interest in different areas outside of science as well.
Yeah, I mean, and for us, I think it's when we start thinking about the dual credit offerings, I think we certainly need to lean on the college counseling office to kind of understand which offerings are going to be most applicable and beneficial for students. We clearly have plenty of students taking AP classes in our departments, but we would love to see more kids getting college credit through dual credit offerings. So we need to lean on their expertise in that area.
The other question I had is maybe a little in the weeds, but I'm just curious. And this has to do with the multi-language learners curriculum. And I know that some kids in the science program start with physics and finish with biology. And I think that's mostly for kids who are in the engineering programs, but I think the typical pathway is more biology, chemistry, physics for most kids. And I'm just curious, looking at this new curriculum, why you've just selected having physics first and then sort of following the project lead the way kind of structure.
Sure. Yeah, that's a great question. In physics, we have words like mass and force. In biology, we have words like adenosine triphosphate. And I think being able to, understand that physics is often a very visual, tactile, not that biology's not, but symbolic perhaps is the word I'm looking for. That is a language that all students speak really well. And by starting with that, with our very beginning learners, we feel like we can best support them. Another reason for the order, however, is it allows for the smoothest transition into our standard general education science courses. So the goal is to support our multilingual learners, but not to keep them there. It's to get them into our general education classes as soon as they're ready, and the on-ramp to do that is supported best by the order of those courses too.
That makes a lot of sense to me. Thank you.
Mr. O'Hara, have any questions or comments?
Yeah, just real quick, the idea about the environmental sciences or the aviation classes, it makes a lot of sense to me. One of my concerns, and something we'll have to address long-term, I think, is the AP honors problem, because you have people who won't take a class if it's not AP or honors. And so I know there's students who avoid those classes, and it's a little frustrating, and it's something I think we as a society kind of have to deal with. Even the parents have to get out of their mindset of we don't need honors classes. No one asks you what your grades are in high school after college, right? So the whole point is to explore. We have so many options for people, and we limit ourselves, or our students limit themselves, and the parents limit the students too by saying, well, you got to have an honors class. So and I don't know if the environmental science is an honors class or not, but could you guys address what's going on with that?
So environmental science is an AP class, but one of the reasons for looking at our courses through a new lens would be to kind of pique that interest or passion, or just to provide information and to give a personal story. So I've wanted to do this for years, and it just hasn't surfaced to where I had time to really look at it. And I have, my middle son is a professional pilot student at Auburn, and he is taking his third earth science class. And he said, Mom, I wish I would have taken earth science in high school. No one told me. And I said, gosh, if you only had someone who had any idea about science classes at home, she could have told you to take it. But to be honest, I didn't think about having him take an earth science class. I mean, like, talk about a mother failure, you know. I thought, well, that would probably be good information. And so I thought, if we really dove into this, we could then inform and communicate. And then I would maybe save other moms from making the same mistake that I made. So, I mean, that's like my personal, one of our slides was the story why, but I didn't think you'd want to hear about Jackson. But I mean, that's one of the things that made me think, you know what, this is probably more important, because I thought it was like an extra to like reframe the lens. And then the House bill came about. So I thought, okay, I should probably look at this. And then my own personal story just really kind of amped it up. Like, there's probably a lot of parents out there that don't realize all of the classes students should be taking for all of the different trades and majors and interests that kids might have.
Yeah, you never know what they're going to like.
Right.
I mean, that's
right.
We have a great pro. You guys do a great. There's so many. It's first time I went to GBS. It's like going into a college when I was, when I went to high school, I didn't have all this stuff. And now you look at it like, yeah, so we should get our kids into this stuff so they can figure out what they want.
Right. And hopefully break down the honors AP barrier and have kids take classes for their interests and their passions rather than the credit. I mean, that would be ideal.
Yeah, ideal. Well, we'll get there eventually. And I guess for the gym, I was really interested on the individual data, what you guys were talking about. It's almost like giving them each their own, not that they're going to have a wearable, but sort of if you can track the data individually and they can see their own progress. Is that what you guys were talking about, kind of?
Give the new guy the mic.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think if you look around the room, most individuals in here are wearing some sort of wearable that gives you tangible data and feedback as it relates to your health. And I think that's vitally important that we provide that for our students. And over the past probably 4 to 5 years, we've actually been accumulating enough polar heart rate sensors and monitors to actually institute those within our courses. So each student has the opportunity to engage in that and actually track their workout in real time in class. So whether that's caloric burn or your heart rate recovery in terms of our overall heart health, I think those are all indicators of ultimately giving our students a long, healthy future and being able to pursue their passions. So that is something we started to institute, and we have enough of the technology now where we can actually embed that throughout all of our PE courses.
I'll add just one. You might not believe this, but not every kid loves PE. So what we want them to do is not only be comfortable with us, be comfortable when they leave us. You've heard that from us in the past. So we really want to spend our time showing them progress, having them be able to go to college and go to a health club or go to their fitness center on campus, understand what they're doing, understand nutrition, kind of run their own plans when we get done with them. So we're really showing them a lot of different tests, a lot of different data, whether it's heart rate monitor or our new strength coaches data, or just different things we're pulling from the state tests. So we're able to share all that data with them year to year to year until they leave us.
Nice, thank you. For the special ed, I'm very excited for the IEPs to get it like that, because I remember when my son got his IEP and it was like buying a house. You just keep signing these forms and forms and forms. And if you can condense it and make it easier for parents to understand and make it more seamless, that's wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. O'Hara. Mr. Galecki?
Don't have much to add because my colleagues asked a lot of the good questions and everything. I was concerned about, we have this big ship here with our curriculum and everything, and you guys are being very responsive to how the world is changing, but drawing in the counselors to help move that, because that is kind of where the rubber hits the road. And for especially some of our students that are mid-swing, they're mid-swing with us in their tenure, they'll see benefits that some of the other kids coming behind, their brothers and siblings, sisters and siblings are coming in behind with a different program than what they were doing. And that's very difficult. So anything you can do to work with the counselors to help guide them, get the marketing out there, this is how it applies. Having a freshman in college, that's how they've adapted their programs as well too, to be more practical for what you will do in a business environment. And that draws them in to see, oh, wait, that calculus class, I was sitting in that physics class. Oh, this now applies to actually, I want to do coding. And this is what it applies there. This is what we're using the equations for. So applaud that. Then one of the questions, the only other question I had, as you guys were talking about the physics curriculum, because I know you're matching it to the multi-language curriculum to what was brought in. And we were kind of on the cutting edge or more innovative among the districts here of having physics go first. It's been a debate in the state among various schools. Should physics be freshman year? Should we leave it at the third? Because there's some advanced mathematical principles and everything. For all of you, who do we compare? I love it that we're comparing against each other and learning from each other, but outside of us, who are we looking at and learning from them? Who do you use as resources and stuff to see? Because not everybody maybe is doing as full of an effort as you guys are, but you've got schools in special ed here, you've got schools that are known in their science programs here. How are you drawing upon them?
One way we do that is Mary and I are part of a group of instructional supervisors or department chairs from the entire Chicago suburban area here. And we get together multiple times a year with what are the hot topics that we need to be thinking about from each other's perspectives, and we challenge each other in their thinking and learn from them. So that definitely is happening outside of just our collaboration.
Is that true across all the different groups and everything okay, wonderful. Keep it up. Please share what you're learning here with them as well too, because you want to have all these pockets disappear where people are growing and thriving. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Galecki. Ms. Segwin?
Everyone's asked such good questions. I don't know if I have one, but just to carry on from the topic around the college counselors and the counselors and how they'll be involved. I mean, do you anticipate like putting together, I don't know, like different profiles or different pathways that you call them, like in writing to share how, because I kids, when they come into high school, they're overwhelmed by a lot of things. And of course, as parents, we, talk to them and work with them on different things. And so I think seeing all of that could be a little intimidating, I guess, to absorb all of that. So I'm just curious how that would be communicated to the kids and the families.
Yeah, absolutely. I think two very practical pieces for the board to understand. The adoption of school links, which you approved, is a huge step for us in that direction where we're going to unify and be able to not only have a singular location for our families, students, counselors, ISs to function in, but that it streamlines our work together. So we can start to see where are those gaps. Second piece that's really important that feeds into that system is it's going to seem like just a document, but our curriculum guide is a significant piece for us. It's not just a tool, but it's the bedrock of who we are and what we believe. So we are revamping that right now. We are just beginning phase 2 of that work that, as I mentioned, that begins tomorrow. That curriculum guide work includes all the ISs in this room and your college counselors and your counselors as a whole, working through making sure that how do we lay this out? How do students understand what we have to offer? How do those offerings align to their 4-year planning cycle, their interests, their potential careers, their potential pathways? all that work is coming forward. I think you're going to be really excited over the next few months what starts coming your way.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Steinberg.
Thank you. I echo your comment. All the great questions, they took most of my questions, which is great.
I saw you working on a pad over there.
Yeah, not this one, and so forth. I'll just say something before asking my questions coming from the other side, from college. You cannot take any life science serious class unless you pass your physics and math. That's beyond any question. Sometimes you can only take math if you're going to go into science. You have to take math with calculus, meaning you have to go to calculus first. So I cannot talk about the sequence in high school, but physics is, I have a friend of mine who's a physicist that says that physics is a real science and math is applied physics. I beg to differ, but kind of like these two are linked together before anything else. So I don't know if it translates exactly that way for high school, but that's you want to get them early on that, because you're going to see so many interesting things in life sciences, chemistry, other things that go back to physics, that if you don't have those 2 or 3 concepts, it's kind of like, I won't say get irrelevant. It gets way less relevant if you get physics on on 8th, 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade. The earlier, the better. And that's just a comment. I'll start with the shortest one. I remember physical education on previous meeting. You were very similar. You were talking about the connection to health and the idea, and you just said it again, of carrying on after you graduate. And I think it's great that you are collecting all that data. And I was thinking about something I didn't hear today, which is mental health and well-being, right? So all of a sudden you get all this data. It's not just simply what do you do? How do you cope with that data? So I'm assuming you're thinking about putting this on the curriculum. It's like having data, it's great, but we know mental health are big issues, and maybe the most known correlation is eating habits, and then having data about how much you weigh and weighting yourself every day can have other consequences. So I think it's important to empower people to know what happens, and at the same time to empower them to say, what are the healthy habits, as you were saying, that we can incorporate to use this data together? It's not just one element. And I'm sure you're doing this. I just want to comment on that. I'm with everybody in terms of career pathways. I think it's great. I'm again, talking from the other side. I was just looking at statistics just to make sure, because they change all the time. Between 20 and 50% of students that go to college go as undeclared majors. And 75% of students that go to college change major at least once. So I wonder, as we think about career path, back to your point in science of looking at the connections, I was thinking, if you work at building these helmets for NFL, if you don't know physics, you're going to have a hard time. And you will never think about that when you're in high school. So strengthening pathways, but at the same time, strengthening the idea that you can go everywhere. You can go everywhere. Whatever you're learning, it's good at any time. And I love your example on the earth science thing, being sure that we tell people that high school is it's a springboard, not a limiting factor. So although we may give you 2 or 3, it wouldn't be great I go to college and say, I want to be A, B, or C. I want to learn more about this. And some people in some schools, they do that, majors and minors expand. So that's a comment. I have a lot of questions, but I don't think we have time regarding the multilingual. So I don't know if we can learn more. And in particular, 2 things. I think it's great to have science pathways that were multilingual. I think it's important to realize that many people that are not English born and that are moving from this country are also moving from families that may be well educated, that just have a language barrier. So the fact that you may be going to physics 1 or any class, that class may be at the same level as the regular physics 1 or anything else. It's just that it's harder to absorb because those are strange words for you. So I wonder if we are working on making, you said it, one of you said it earlier, the idea is to move them to the regular ones. Hopefully, as they do the multilingual option, they are learning as much as the people are not doing. So we don't start, you were talking about honors and AP and everything. So we don't start creating these stigmas about, should I go to a multilingual or should I stretch myself and go to the regular one, because otherwise it's not going to look good on my college application. So I really appreciate that at least we're offering this to our students. I think it's important. My question is actually connected to our English program, because as our multilingual population grows, and you're talking about, where's the English there? You are talking about options for seniors. I hope that our multilingual students or ESL students, when they get to a senior level, they get similar opportunities, and they get to, as they move through the sequence, they get to be able to go to similar kind of options as when they apply to college, they get a similar level, not just simply speaking English, speaking, you get it or you don't get it, at some point you'll get it. At some point you keep your accent as well, but that's a different story. But the question is, can you manage the vocabulary? Can you manage the writing styles? Can you do other options so you don't start from one step behind?
Yes, so thank you for the question. We're actually really pretty excited about the opportunity to introduce dual credit at the senior level because it will actually increase access for students to post-secondary material. Unlike the AP curriculum, which is wonderful as well, if a student enrolls in a dual credit course, so dual credit English 101 in this context, earning a C or better in the course will automatically earn that student college credit. So that is exciting, especially in the context of multilingual learners. I remember, Dr. Steinberg, you asked me a very similar question last year. If you recall, I was talking about the alignment of evidence-based writing skills that we were working on at Glenbrook North. And I remember you asking how that incorporates English language learners. And if I recall correctly, I had shared with you that when I used to actually teach freshman multilingual learners and also dual credit seniors at the same time, I taught those bookends. And I had students who started in the multilingual program as freshmen, but then were able to access dual credit as seniors. So maybe AP language, perhaps the junior level, was not quite accessible to them just yet because they needed another year to work on their language skills. But then going into dual credit English 101 at the senior level was very much accessible. So I think introducing a dual credit option would in fact allow much greater access for multilingual students to access a college-based curriculum.
Thank you. And thank you for keeping the presentation to whatever, 14, 16 minutes.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Shine, do you have any questions or comments?
Nope, I think the board members there have covered most things. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So once again, thank all of you and team one here.
Team one.
And I know we're ready for team two, but again, thank you to you and all the efforts of the folks who are not here who are helping with these things we're doing. So thank
We'll
you.
do a little transition work here.
Transition time, folks.
No, yeah, you're fine.
We want to get up here.
How are you?
Great, thanks.
All right, well, we've made our transition as seamless as possible. This is year two. Now, as a reminder, these folks presented last year their year one work. A lot of that was built on what they had planned to do. And you'll hear tonight what they found and what they've been implementing from that year one research portion. So to get us started will be our GBN and GBS Social Studies Department.
Good evening, I'm Jeannie Logan. I'm the Instructional Supervisor for Social Studies at GBS. We actually did not intend to have very similar curriculum improvement projects, but I think given sort of the waters that we're swimming in and the increasing challenges of the online reading environment, both of our schools focused on students' reading skills, and we took a slightly different approach. And for us, we really wanted to find ways that we could deal with the challenges of student reading comprehension, their retention, and their stamina, and really digging into what strategies are out there, tested and research-based strategies that would enhance students' reading efficacy. So I'm gonna talk about what we did specifically at GBS. We really, I think the key insight that we had was that as we identified the different types of texts that we were asking students to read, rather than differentiating by the text type, we realized it made more sense to identify what the purpose of the reading was, and the purpose of the reading would then determine what kinds of strategies were most important. So this led us to developing our reading strategies framework that really sort of categorized three types of purposes for reading. So the first one is acquiring new information, and this would be sort of the typical textbook reading. It helps kids build mental schema, introduce new key concepts. And for that type of reading, the kind of toolkit of strategies that students really need are note-taking strategies. They need to be able to organize the information into their own notes. The second kind of purpose that we had tended to be around integrating new information into existing knowledge, or introducing new perspectives or complexity. And these would be more like supplementary articles, secondary sources, news articles or editorials. And for that type of reading, students needed a toolkit of annotation strategies. And then the third type of text purpose was to promote disciplinary thinking. And these would be historical documents, primary sources, where we really wanted students to dive deeply into a text and apply some disciplinary methodology. And so we developed, using a combination of different tools that were out there, a historical method guide that sort of walked students through the process of pre-reading, reading, close reading, and post-reading cognitive moves. And we sort of are adapting that format, pre-reading, reading, post-reading, to the other text types as well. So that's kind of our ongoing work.
Hello, good evening, everyone. Scott Williams from Glenbrook North. I would agree with Jeannie. I would say that we ended up producing highly complementary work, with Glenbrook South producing several very specific models that I can't wait to show the GBN teachers. And I think GBN has found maybe not so much concrete, but we found plenty of good strategies and some interesting findings. So when I was here last year, I told you guys I was reading the book, How We Read Now by Naomi Barron. And then I shared that with the social studies department. We read a couple of chapters from that. And then to that end, we wanted to know, what does this look like at Glenbrook North? So we endeavored to survey every student who was enrolled in a social studies class last May. We ended up with just under 1,400 students, a pretty sizable sample across all the levels and all the grades. And we had some pretty interesting findings. One of the questions we asked was, I'll just give you the exact phrasing, I am more likely to carefully and completely read when I use, and the choices boiled down essentially to paper or e-text. And very consistently, 71 to 72% of the students said they're more likely to carefully and completely read when they use paper than when they use an e-text. The other thing we were interested in was, what strategies can we use to be better teachers of reading? To use a terrible coaching metaphor, instead of just complaining that our kids don't run fast, what can we do to actually make them faster so that they can do what it is we want them to do? We don't think of ourselves as reading instructors, but it's so central to what we do. So we brought in one of our reading specialists, Hannah Kang, who was wonderful, and she gave our department a lecture, and a very interactive lecture, and a bunch of activities that we could do. She modeled them very well. And then we surveyed our students about those. And all of them had, all of them had majorities of students saying it's helpful when teachers do that. The one that was most striking, 89% of students said that it's very helpful or helpful when a teacher explains, takes 2 or 3 minutes to explain what the students are going to read, what specifically they should look for, and gives the students perhaps an essential question to think about as they read. So I'm a pre-reading lecture, so to speak. And none of this is new. There's probably excellent teachers that have been doing this for 100 years. I've done it certainly from time to time, but it gave us some more focus to think about doing better consistently going forward.
I am the Math IS at GBN, and I'm introducing Phil Gartner. He's the Math IS at GBS. fun fact, Phil and I met at Northwestern in a math course, so kind of fun. We're still working together years later. Last year, if you recall, we spoke of our support systems in math. We're now in year 2 of developing and refining our multi-tiered systems of support in math at both of our buildings. As we're working on our models, we've begun the work of delineating our tier 1, 2, and 3 interventions and how they work into the overall building in terms of supporting our students. Our buildings offer interventions beyond the scope of the general tier 1 classroom teacher supports. We have a lens on proactively identifying students in need of support via screening and subsequent appropriate interventions. We log student visits and share data with appropriate support personnel and loop in parents as well, teachers and case managers as well who work with those students. And there's more emphasis on feedback loops to record and review data and modify the interventions as they're needed.
Thank you. And we are going to just state that the impact of the work, the student supports have been robust, numerous, and have been used effectively. You'll notice a large number there, but beyond the number, Maria alluded to it, there's a great partnership between the tier 1 teacher and classroom and the communication that goes along with best serving the student. So that could involve, what have you tried? What's worked? What do we still need to address? It's a continuing partnership. Students are involved in supporting their classmates. We have peer tutoring in the resource centers, and much of that is focused around math, but it's for all different subjects. We have a really expanding program with students assisting in classrooms, and that's both at North and South. In terms of important programs where there's more prescribed and strategic tier 2 interventions, the guided studies program is very important. Now that's a general program, but it interweaves specifically with math. So somebody in guided study might get referred to work with a numeracy interventionist. An example might be there's been some testing or there's been a concern raised about maybe a gap in the mathematical knowledge. Let's say a student's missing some work with signed numbers, working with negative numbers, kind of a 5th, 6th grade skill that really our teachers aren't teaching. We can identify that, put together a plan, and then deliver that plan. And the numeracy interventionist would do that. That's well beyond the scope of what maybe a tutor would do in our centers. In terms of next steps, we're really excited about the work that's being done. We're going to continue to refine our systems. We continue to monitor the utilization of the supports. We're going to collect and analyze data on the student growth. And finally, both schools continue to seek feedback from everyone involved as we improve our program.
Okay, good evening. I'm Josh Merrill, Instructional Supervisor for World Languages. Thank you very much for having us tonight. So in the World Language Department at GBN, we are in year 2 of our work to provide timely and effective feedback in highly differentiated classrooms. Differentiation to address the needs of all learners is more important than ever before, and will continue to grow with changing demographics, interests, and needs. As we discussed in team 1, the demographics of the Glenbrooks is changing, and we need to be able to respond to those changes and serve our students as best we can. And the differentiation in our area was informed by our findings. And you'll hear Danita mention this as well. We are testing extensively with Apple and STAMP testing for our level 3 and 4 language students, and that includes our core and honors level students. We put out a questionnaire recently for GBN students in world language classrooms with nearly 400 students completing the survey. And that questionnaire was centered around some of the best practices that we're putting into place related to differentiation and stacked classes. And we also surveyed 10 different neighboring school districts, their world language chairs, regarding best practices for differentiation as well. And we're already starting to see the impact of that work because, as you know, we're in year 2, and multiple GBN world language teachers have researched and created curriculum consistent with best practices for differentiated classrooms. That includes implementing project-based learning, classroom aids. We've really enhanced our student teaching assistants or teaching aid program as well, using different learning spaces for instruction. We've even had several teachers begin a year-long book study with our instructional coaches at GBN on differentiation. And I'm proud to say that I'm a part of that. I've been participating in that year-long study too, where we're reading Doable Differentiation by Caroline Tomlinson and How to Differentiate Instruction by Caroline Tomlinson and Doable Differentiation by Jane Kais. And moving forward regarding next steps, because obviously this is a evolving process. We're going to monitor data to identify areas of success with differentiation and create positive student experiences. We're going to use the data to drive the identification of further growth opportunities as well. And ultimately, we're going to continue to infuse differentiation into our practices. For students entering high school in 2028, the Illinois State Board of Education will require 2 years of foreign language for graduation. So this is a practice that's going to be, differentiation that is going to be very essential to our work moving forward. Thank you.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm Danita Fitch from Glenbrook South World Languages. As Josh mentioned, we have a lot of overlap in the work that we've been doing. Differentiation is just really what we're living and breathing every day. But our focus for the past year and a half has been on realigning. I would like to call it a post-pandemic realignment of our sequences. Language instruction is very sequential, very similar to mathematics. And, we have to be very honest with the fact that during the pandemic, there were some significant losses that we took, even though the data, when we looked at proficiency data for our baseline, we were very pleased with where our students are at, but we know that they could be better. And so we've worked really hard the past year and a half with horizontal teams, which means for all the languages across levels, as well as our vertical teams, to make sure that a student entering level 1 all the way through AP, or level 1 through the level 5, which might be a non-honors course, that those building blocks are very sequentially created and aligned to our standards. The work has been really exciting, and the data piece has been really important for us. It's been significant, especially for our students and our teachers that are in the non-honors sequence. I think because of the pandemic, I think that teachers and students, really their self-perceptions were very low. They felt, students that were not in honors language felt that they really weren't talented language learners. And the teachers were pretty down too, because they had gotten into some habits where we couldn't do the assessments that we normally wanted to do. So we really couldn't see exactly what our kids were capable of. Well, as we were looking at our curriculum, we've been able to see that our learning objectives, our targets by level for proficiency along the standards, we are right on. And our standard level students are also right on. When we did the testing, proficiency testing for our level 463 courses, that would be the non-honor sequence, those students, every student except for 3, received the commendation for biliteracy already for the state of Illinois. 4 of those students earned the seal of biliteracy scores already. And that provided students and teachers with a lot of motivation and a lot of excitement about their skills. And so as a department, all of our departments, we're constantly looking at aligning our curriculum and that collaboration piece. But I would say that we went all in because we knew we had to get this work done and really get ourselves again and aligned.
Good evening. I'm Dawn Hall, IS in CTE in Glenbrook South, and this is Mary Casarag at North. So we exceeded our own expectations in the student responses from the CTE course career surveys, with students reporting a significant increase in knowledge of potential careers and confidence in what they will do after high school. And opportunities for growth came from a significant percentage of students interested in gaining more support in identifying a potential career before graduation. We can support students in connecting content and skills to potential careers. Students also prioritized experiences in identifying a potential career through internships, job shadow, and field trips.
Another thing we saw on these surveys were that students prioritize what the professional skills that they improved on by taking CTE courses. As you can see, creativity, problem solving, and real life applications came up to the top. As part of our next steps, we're really listening to the students' voice and how they answered our surveys in what we'll be doing next. So what we'd like to do next is to expand some of our internship placements. And as you've heard from many of our colleagues around, is how do we have students know what they want to do? We heard a lot in science, and with our internship program, our students can do internships in science to gain those skills and to have a better idea of what they're going to do once they graduate GBN. Exploring job shadowing opportunities. That's not something that we've really done a lot with. And I know other districts utilize this well, and maybe this is something that we can explore to see to add to the Glenbrooks. Also increasing field trips, guest speakers, networking in our courses to have students really hear from that person who does the job. What is it that they do? What did they need to get there? And how did their path go to get there? Because sometimes, as we hear, it's not necessarily a straight line, but the interest is still there. So what they were interested in maybe found a different path along the way. And that's what we're going to work on.
Good evening, Chad Davidson, IS for Fine Arts at North. Good to see you all. Before Cody illustrates the work that we're currently focused on, I did want to just give you a little insight on how we ended up partnering together, because last year it didn't seem like we were quite as much in alignment as we actually are. You may recall that last year North focused on collecting information from our students about the focus and function of the fine arts in the high school. And now that we collected that information, we began the process this year of looking at the curriculum that we offer and seeing where adjustments could or should be made if needed. And so through our conversation, we sort of realized, hey, you know, we're not that far off. Cody's a little ahead of me. They're working on advanced level classes, and I'm still at the beginner level classes that we're looking at curriculum. But the scope of the work that we're doing is very, very similar, although the level of class is not. So.
Yeah, our paths are starting to merge together, and part of that is we're working on our advanced level curriculum, but at the same time, we're also seeking out opportunities to collect student voice data so that can inform our decisions as we're moving forward and really work together across the district. So as we're working on revising our curriculum maps, we're doing so with a lens focused on equity and inclusion, student sense of belonging and well-being, and promoting student identity and voice. It might shock you to learn, or maybe it won't shock you, that curriculum mapping is not always considered to be the most exciting topic, but it is very important work. It ensures that our students are exposed to consistent and equitable experiences, regardless of when they take a class or who is teaching it. In our particular case at GBS, we were either missing many of our curriculum maps or many were incomplete. I think at some point in time they likely existed, but just through transition and turnover, they were lost to the Google Drive whims. This particular work also allows us to engage with one another more collaboratively across the district as we move toward greater alignment in our course offerings. To meet these goals, we employ a backwards design model to revise our curriculum. In this model, we start with the end in mind. So we establish essential questions and enduring understandings as overall themes for the course and what we hope students will walk away with at the end. We generally aim to have 3 to 5 each of the essential questions and enduring understandings for a semester-long course, and then use those as a guide to inform the creation of units of instruction and assessments to measure our progress toward end goals. As we're bringing this work together through this year and in the future, we're excited again to be able to actually collaborate more with one another on how we can best support our students and encourage them to continue in their fine arts education. We'll do this through continuing to seek out student input and perspective to better understand their needs and possible obstacles. And then we'll use that data to inform what courses we'll revise next and work together to make sure that we're giving data-driven recommendations to improve our programs and curriculum.
All right, so that was 2 minutes longer, but we had an extra department there. So, so it's Q&A time for this group, and I will turn it over to all of you.
Thank you, Mr. Bretag, and thank you all of our ISs for all the work behind this and the sharing this evening. Much appreciated. I just want to choose two things because there are so many I could just mention, but I do love the back to the basics, what I call basics of reading skills, because they affect everything we do. And we're in a generation where so often people are reading very short pieces, a tweet or a text message, and it's not, I call it next. I didn't know. I was trying to figure that out. You guys know what I meant though. But we are not learning as just the discipline of learning to read something more complex. And that can mean any of these disciplines or the others that preceded you. So the emphasis on the basic skills, it may be as old as dirt, but it's still extraordinarily important, even as we adapt to that. And the other, I just want to mention, we've heard this in various ways, but the involvement of students to be tutors and to be in classrooms. That kind of ad hoc mentoring goes on anyway. It's wonderful to see whether it's on a field or in a classroom, where the more senior or older students often are the ones who are tutoring or mentoring the younger ones. But it's also a great way for those older ones to learn. Because I'm sure you all know as teachers, you learn a lot from your students all the time as you're teaching and communicating. So giving students opportunities to learn ultimately is the kind of way they can be leaders themselves, or ultimately a manager in a company or in an organization. And those skills start early. And so thank you for giving them those opportunities. It's good for us. So many more things I could say, but I'll open it to my colleagues now because I'm sure they have plenty of things to add as well. I'm going to start over here, Ms. Seguin.
I have two questions, maybe one observation, one question. I was listening to a news program this last weekend, and I heard a statistic that was just scary, that the average American, so this is like after schooling, reads only one book a year. Yeah. I mean, I was just so taken aback by that, honestly. And just, listening to what you were saying about, getting back to the basics of reading, I'm like, it's like refreshing to hear that, honestly, because I think, and I'd love to hear your views. I think that we've become so accustomed to reading short, emails and things like that, that we don't take the time and the energy to like sit down and read a full book. But I was just wondering if you've if you've seen that like over the past 10, 15 years, that with kids maybe that have become so focused on electronic reading in that way, that like that's what's driving down, our, I don't know, the time that we spend reading books.
It's an ongoing challenge. There's no question about it. I mean, I've been in a classroom now for 33 years, and I've seen differences in the student stamina, in their focus, in their willingness to just work around a word or just even look it up.
Yeah.
To make sure that they understand what they're reading.
Yeah.
No question about it.
And are there, techniques and practices that you're using in the classroom to try to improve that, to help that?
In most of the literature that we read, it seemed like the overwhelming advice was try to read it on paper and slow down. So I think we have tried to figure out how can we slow our students down. That's really sort of our key approach. And I think especially using the framework of what are your pre-reading moves, what are your reading moves, and what are your post-reading moves, really sort of force them to take it step by step. And then within each type of text or purpose, we'll have different tools and strategies. But our goal is really to get them to slow down, dive deep.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, thank you. I just heard that this last week and I just thought I'd bring it up. And the other question, I know Chad, when you were here last year, you talked about, the number of students that have been part of the fine arts over the years and that it's decreased since you've been here. Have you, as part of this research that are you looking at the different ways to, I don't know if encourage is the word, or make it easier for kids to be a part of the fine arts and academics? I know that was, a big focus for you last year.
Yeah, so we continue to think about that almost nonstop. And this year we have had some articulation with some of our sender school administrators to try to figure out why the students leave the junior highs with one path in mind, and when they arrive at our school, their path changes a little bit. And so we've tried to figure out, is there a communication issue? Are there misconceptions we can clear up? We also created sample schedules. So if your student is an academy kid, here's how they can be in the arts for 4 years. If your student requires a lot of academic supports, here's how they can still be involved in the arts for all 4 years. So we've tried that. And then we've tried another few, we've initiated a few other articulation activities that have brought about 100. We collaborated with Glenbrook South for a choir camp where we brought about 100 junior high students into our building
That was great. Yeah.
for about 6 or 7 hours on a Saturday. That was really, really special and important. And then we also are continuing to just sort of remediate, and it's easier as adults to disassociate the effects of COVID, but how many of the arts weren't even being offered at the junior high level when those kids were at that formative point in their academic careers, because it wasn't deemed to be safe. And so they were choosing to do other things. So yeah, I can tell you that, boy, are we're doing all of the things.
Oh, that's great. No, that's awesome to hear.
Thank you. Thanks for the question.
Thank you. Dr. Steinberg.
Thank you. I first want to say I appreciate all the work put into it, because I'm assuming year one was hard to collect, but then as you move into year two, now you have all this information. It's like, what do I do with all of this? And probably you have 20 different directions you want to run into it. So I really appreciate the effort and trying to put it together, this on a short time frame. I joined my colleagues on the reading part. I'll just put a twist, and I hope my son, I doubt my son will be listening to me now. Thursday morning when we had the outage, the AT&T outage, he jokingly sent us a text because it wasn't Wi-Fi, and he's like, I'm afraid to leave the house. I don't know how to deal with the world without my phone working. All right, so that's how people see themselves today. So I think the electronic reading is a mix, because you are reading in a tablet or you're reading somewhere where you're getting your text messages, you're getting so much interaction that it's hard to focus on this. Now, I know a lot of people that read on this whatever it's called, Kindle and all these things. That is a total different experience. It's almost like reading on paper because there's no other things. But kudos if you can make any inroads on people reading more, because I know it's challenging. The last thing is kind of a request, and it's a general request. I'm assuming we're hearing you're learning a lot. And we are working on strategic planning in general as the schools and then each school. It would be nice to, as you keep learning more, to have like a pathway to use the same thing, but for each area, for each group. I mean, where, after you learn what you learn, where do you think you're going to be going? Not just simply, I'm going to be doing A, B, and C. Our goal is 5 years from now, be doing this. And we're going to attack it. The first year, we're going to do this. And then we assess how we did. And then next year, so it builds a picture. Because otherwise, every year we'll be discussing the flavor of the year of what we just learned. But probably next year, we're going to be interested to see what happened with what you showed this year and what you've seen the first time. And that can show us a nice progression. And it doesn't have to be, well, you're collecting a lot of data anyways, but each department probably has its own story. And it's very nice, by the way, to see that between schools, there's coordination and we are converging into similar topics, because our kids are not that much different. Our demographics may be different, but we live nearby. So I would appreciate moving forward as we work from year 2 to year 3 to start building that pathway, for each area.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. That was when we revised the curriculum improvement process, that was a huge or a significant direction this team and the prior team wanted to go. it felt that year to year, it was just this moving thing versus what is the work that we're sinking our teeth into. I think it's really important for this group to know that we actually come together as part of quarterly meetings, but in the August time, we come together and we talk about the strategic directions. What are we working on? Where are these connecting? What are the sustained parts? So even in the memo, we tried this year to really make that clear, how these strategic connections, and that's part of my responsibility to see what are the patterns that are emerging that we can support from a district level to put, what we like to say is put wheels on their ideas, but that we're moving together, that we're finding those patterns. So it's absolutely what we're working on, and we'll continue. As you see in our dashboards, that's it's a little backwards. Our dashboards come before these, but that's influenced so much by this work and how we're patterning, what data are we looking at, and how we're informing each other. So absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Steinberg. Ms. Mullenbeck?
Couple of things. I completely agree with what Bruce said about how great it is to have kids involved in teaching other kids and having the tutors available, having kids in the classroom teach their peers about things that they're better with. But I actually think that just the breadth and availability of these tier 2 supports for kids in math, I love to hear how utilized they are, because I think that that's going to help our kids tremendously when they get to college and they're struggling with something, that they've normalized this idea that they don't just struggle and struggle and struggle and all of a sudden it's the final and there's no way they're going to pass this class. They know that they can go to, there's someplace they can go. Everyone goes there if they need help. And it's just, something that's completely rote and, run of the mill for them to do, that they're prepared to do that. I think that's terrific. And I think that having all those resources available makes it so easy for them to take advantage of those opportunities and feel like whenever I need the help, I should just go get it. So that's great to hear about. One thing I thought also, just thinking about reading, even I all my life I was, a voracious reader, and you just don't sit down and read a novel the way you used to, right? Life gets complicated. I don't know that our kids do that very much, but they are still having to read a lot. And I thought that the focus on the purpose of reading, as opposed to, well, this is a particular type of text and therefore I should approach it this way. I think having a purpose based approach is going to stand them in such good stead as they go forward and have all these different opportunities. It may not be a whole book, but they are going to be reading things all the time, and they really need to think about, what do I need to get out of this text? Why am I reading this? And what's the goal here? I think it's a really great lens for them to use, and to then give them a toolkit for that is, even better. And then lastly, I thought that the idea of all these experiential learning opportunities in CTE, like to be able to go out and do shadowing or do internships, that feels like the wave of the future for education generally. And again, we're going to have kids who are not intimidated by this idea when they're in college and have the opportunity to go do some sort of job sharing or following someone. They won't be like, oh, that sounds a little much. They'll be ready to do it because they've done it and it's normalized to them. So that's so much of what I heard from this panel sounded like just what we need to do to prepare the kids for the next step. So that was great to hear.
Thank you, Mr. O'Hara.
Yes, thank you. I'm going to Michelle's point on the one book. I'm gonna personally, I'm always
chapter,
reading
maybe
5 books
Yeah,
myself. I've got a science book, a history book. So I'm on the Kindle. And I guess one of the things I'm concerned about is I heard with the paper versus e-text. I was not a Kindle fan until I got one. And when you actually use them, they're very, very efficient. You can look up a word just by holding it and stuff. And when I was helping my daughter with the social studies, and she was using the e-text, and it was almost impossible to use that book. It was poorly written. The sentences were long and hard. And as you went to each page, someone just took a picture of each page. And then as you went to the next page, as you're reading this long sentence, it would load for a bit. And by the time it opened up, you're like, oh, wait, what was the sentence? You have to go back. And it was really difficult to use. So while I agree with the students, they probably said that, they weren't using something that was very efficient or good. And so I guess you guys have probably had the Wikipedia hole where you go down, you start reading something, and then suddenly you find yourself way down as you click on all the links. There was none of that in that textbook. I mean, it was embarrassingly bad. So I would challenge us to make, and it's not you guys obviously didn't write the book or take the pictures, but it's something that we really need to find some stuff that can get these kids engaged, because fundamentally they're going to be reading on electric stuff. Long term, you can barely get a newspaper nowadays unless it's online. And so we have to engage them in such a way that they're going to be able to use this stuff. And my experience with the Kindle, bless my wife for making me get it, lessened our luggage everywhere we went. It makes it very, very effective. For the math one, I'm really interested in the normalizing numbers you guys have. Normalizing the help is a great idea. And I wonder at our penetration, because you mentioned the 5,500 people using it, and obviously that's multiple times for some people. And so the question is, how do we reach those people who really need the help? Because we still have people failing in math, right? We still have people having issues. And so I'm sure you guys are figuring a way to realize what the penetration is into the student body, instead of, because some of the people are going there already, right? I forget what the number was last year as to how many were using it. And hopefully it's higher this year. Maybe it was 3,000 last year and this year's it's 5,500. Is that, I kind of remember a 3,000 number. Is that close?
Did you just ask math people for data?
Yes.
Hold, please. No. Last year, I think I reported more of the data on the GBN usage. So that's where you're thinking of that number. This year, Phil and I really sat down. And although we call things differently at different campuses, we're actually sort of doing the same stuff. So to not over inundate you with data, as we were told, we just kind of kept it pretty surface. But if you have more questions that you'd like us to dig into more, we definitely have those numbers for you. I think in last year we got into the conversation of, well, does it look bad if you have too many kids coming in for math help, right? And we talked a lot about normalizing visiting these areas and how do you reach those students that need the most help. And that's why Phil and I spent a lot of time talking over the past few years. It's not a one size fits all model. Some kids are going to be very comfortable going independently to the Math Resource Center. Others are going to need some hand holding and maybe need like an enrichment center or a math interventionist. The peer tutor approach really connects with some kids that really prefer to work with a peer. So we're just trying to really open up avenues of help and try to meet the kids with what level of preference works best for them. So it's been nice to be able to sort of have a menu of options for kids. And the ones that we identify that need the most support, well, guess what? We're going to assign you to that support. And we're going to work with your parents and tell them why you're in this center. And we'll keep that data, we'll share it. We're talking with your classroom teacher, with your interventionist, and we're staying on top of you. So I'm pleased to see thousands of kids come through our resource areas for help, because that shows they're doing what they should be doing when they leave us, which is get help when you need it. It's not embarrassing. We all struggle with something in life, so get it done.
Yeah, as a parent, it's a wonderful thing to have your kids actually reach out to their teachers or to, and then when they talk to you about it, it's suddenly not an issue. It's just a story they have when they went and met their teacher. And hopefully that's what we're doing. I guess, so what I hear you saying though, is that we are penetrating more than we were previously to get to the students who weren't necessarily utilizing the help. Yes?
Yes.
Yes. Wonderful.
Thank you, Mr. O'Hara. Mr. Malecki.
I get not to pick on the math team any further and stuff, but since you guys
no more number of questions,
since you brought up
yeah.
intervention and everything, but this applies actually to the entire group and everything, as we're talking about getting folks intervening with the students' development and everything. And I'm using math as the example, but a student may understand the logarithmic functions and everything, understand that concept, but there's another underlying issue. They're a high achieving student, but then they have testing anxiety. How does that other issues get addressed or identified so it's not a quarter or entire semester that they go through wrestling with really not the material, but wrestling with other issues that are preventing them from succeeding with us? When do those resources get drawn in and everything? How do these folks, I guess, as they're going into the math resource center or one of the resource centers, communicate, because this can easily slip right between the cracks?
Absolutely. There's a real in-depth answer, but in the spirit of time, I'll try to keep it as concise as possible. I think a few years ago, if you were to ask that question, we were struggling. We were doing great work, but we were working really hard. We had data all over the place. What we have been working deeply on the last 2.5 years, Panorama is a system we put in place. We have greater intersections with our student services and our teaching and learning so that there's data at everybody's fingertips. So if you are going to the MEC and you're getting support there, that data is there inside of the Panorama system and vice versa. So the things you're talking about, we have a holistic lens on individual students and groups of students. And we're, what I would say, more proactive than we've ever been. We're able to see what's a student may be excelling, but why and academically, but they're struggling over here. Or vice versa, we see this, and how do we make that connection to say, maybe that's why the academics are struggling?
Well, but we're still using data. I guess the part that I'm wrestling with is, especially using the testing anxiety example, they may be doing well and everything else doing well in homework, but for some reason they're getting C's and D's on tests.
Yep.
And no one's connecting the pieces because it's still very data driven based on the testing. Are there flags in there to show?
Yes.
That disconnect?
Yeah, there's flags in there in terms of, that's why our social emotional screeners, the pieces we're embedding in there, and then the connections with student services. Now our Panorama system is actually the integration of that into student services allows our academic to understand what's happening with the student, not just in their data, but in what is being counseled, what is being shared, what is being worked upon, that we know, hey, there is a potential issue here. What we're seeing is not an academic, it's an anxiety-based performance issue. And how do we address that? How do we work together? And that's what you'll hear us use the word teaming structures. That's the real goal, is really solid, strong teaming structures so that those students are being proactively addressed, but also if we see something, we can react much more efficiently in terms of what we have access to now.
And then I guess the other piece of this is, say we are able to intervene and assess. Now, how easy or what is the new process under all this reviewing and everything to help the students maybe migrate and move up in the curriculum because of other factors that they were graded, evaluated, but we put them into regular science. They were just having a testing issue, but now we realize they should have been in honors. They really understand some very advanced concepts.
Coming soon.
Okay.
You just teed up a beautiful conversation that will come to you pretty soon. So we're actually, we're working on that right now, how we're structuring what we effectively call our levels. How do we know where students progress towards? What are the access barriers that potentially we haven't seen before that we need to take into consideration? And we use the word, what is the holistic picture of the student so that we can best position them for success? And someone actually said it earlier this evening, or stretch them.
As I was thinking, we were talking about the multilingual learners and everything. It's something is a barrier, but once you figure out a way to help them develop around that, and it's no longer something that's preventing them, how do we help them thrive and everything? Last point, I guess, or question for the group and everything. If you guys are in year 2 now, you've got colleagues there that were year 1 and everything. If you went back a year and gave yourself a piece of advice about the process, what would you have done differently? What lessons learned?
I would have talked to my colleague more.
I was just gonna say the same thing. We're ending up in the same place, and it sounds like the same thing happened in social studies. So, and not that Chad and I don't talk all the time, but last year we weren't
really talking about this until I would say way too late in the game. Had we started that conversation really together more earlier, we'd probably be more in the exact same spot instead of flip-flopping and now, starting to come to the same place.
Anyone else? Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gladkey. Mr. Shine, any questions or comments?
No, none at this time. Thank you.
Great. Mr. Breetag and everyone, thank you again for all of these efforts. Thank you for sharing this evening. Always let us know through Mr. Breetag or Dr. Johns or directly if we can be supportive in any way possible. This is at the heart of what we do, is teaching, learning, going forward, never being complacent. And it's just fantastic to see the progress and the ongoing evolution. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
I meant to mention that. Yeah, internship where it's required a lot, especially the engineering one. Really required.
So here's what I'm paying $30,000 this semester for.
Oh,
Well,
Mr. Gladkey.
Well, speaking of reading,
Wait. So wait, 1 second. I'm not going to read quite yet. Everyone good? All right. So item 2, 6.2 is looking at our instructional material textbook changes. Dr. Johns.
Well, we know that Mr. Breetag is on the cusp of a very good segue, so let's not take it away from him. Mr. Breetag, let's hear this.
Chomping at the 6.2 bit here. So
there's really not much to it other than, speaking of reading, this is our annual process of bringing forward our textbook changes, and you have received those as we have annual adds and drops. And we have with us our ISs here to answer any questions about the textbooks you see there. You will note that there are some electronic text and there are print. So there's a nice blend inside there. And to some earlier conversations, just a note on the electronic textbooks. We continue to look at those now from a much different lens, and it's a lens of value add versus simply cost efficiency. Print and digital text have come to a point where we're roughly talking the same, and this gives us the opportunity to really pivot and say what is best for the student experience. So when you do see a digital text here, know that they've been compared to what is best, whether print or digital.
okay, thank you, Mr. Breetag, for the introduction. So folks, you've seen this. We do get this annually, and we're just going to open up for any questions. Anyone over here, questions?
I'm sorry, real quick, you said that they're the same. Do you mean the same in cost?
Yeah, the cost used to be at a point where to get a digital textbook was significantly less than a print book, but you're starting to see those costs be pretty equal.
That's interesting.
Yeah, so at this point, we're really excited about our capacity to look and say what is best for students, and knowing that we still need to look at costs. You'll see our costs are relatively low. We still need to look at those costs, but we can put the emphasis on what is best for the student learning experience.
Yeah, and why is that? Like, why is the? I'm curious to see why the cost is. Yeah, I would love to hear that.
A lot has changed.
Yeah, on a very high level, recognizing that not each publication is the same, nor do publishers all act in the same way. But there was a rapid departure from the purchasing of print-based materials in favor of multi-year licenses. And those multi-year licenses initially were perpetual for life. That then led to less acquisitions, which then resulted in now you're only buying 5-year licenses. And if you don't purchase all of your quantities up front, then you receive penalties for additional add-on licenses as your population growth increases. And so it's at the end of the day, as I can say, software licenses used to be great in that they only increased 2% or 3%, and now we're seeing 5 to 7%. It's just a reality of the economy.
Okay.
And look at the next time you purchase a Kindle book, you can get the print one or the Kindle one relatively the same now and delivered to your house in 12 hours.
Yeah, interesting. Thank
Any
you.
other questions, Dr. Steinberg?
I just go back to Mr. O'Hare's comment. I still think it's more convenient, the electronic one, but one thing I wasn't, I guess, paying attention on my side, this idea that some of these ebooks are just simply photo shoots of pages, which makes little sense, say, for the weight that you are saving on your backpack. So I think content of the book is critical on what book you're selecting, but if there are similar options, but there's a better ebook, I'll go with the one that is better prepared.
Correct.
I think the opportunity, again, back to what Mr. O'Hare was saying, the opportunity with the ebooks is not just the reading part of it, it's expanding on what you are reading, which the other part, it's harder to do with the classic book.
Correct.
Over here, Mr. Wacky?
Well, I was going to say, yeah, if there's an option for having both available to the student, because many times as having a freshman currently who packs her backpack, goes off to competitions or whatever, misplaces something and then leaves it. Oh yeah, that's right. I have to read that by tomorrow morning. Wait, it's online. So it's, while the hard copy is wonderful and everything, if they don't have the material at all, it's not helpful. So
I may have a sophomore doing the same thing.
yeah. So anything we can do leveraging RJ, I guess, back with the licenses to make sure there's options available.
Correct.
Yes.
Appreciate that. And I know the families do too, just to make sure that they stay on course.
Correct. Ever have one forget a shoe? How do you forget a shoe? I tell you.
Don't it?
We're on textbooks, not shoes, but okay. Do you have any questions, Mr. O'Hare?
I do. I'm excited to see the books. I especially like the Divergent type book, the one that's what's it, Legend, the one that they're for English, where it's Les Miserables rewritten in the 20, and then seeing Macbeth as a graphic novel. I mean, you want to talk about reaching out to the kids. My youngest had to read Romeo and Juliet, and as a 15-year-old, he could care less, but Macbeth, suddenly you've got witches and swords and, he's in, and you put it in a graphic novel, he'll read the darn thing. So I'm excited to see we're reaching out to the kids that way. So.
Ms. Mellenbeck, anything to follow that?
Witches and goblins and swords.
I think it's a great list.
Yeah.
Well played.
Thank you.
Mr. Shine, anything on your end?
Mr. Shine has stepped off.
Oh, okay, fair enough. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Bitek. This is gonna come back on consent then next time? Okay, wonderful. And you're not gonna do Chromebooks. Okay, fair enough. All right.
No.
All right, thank you, Mr. Bitek, for all your work tonight. We now move to item 6.3, which is our discussion of the class of 2028. Amazing. Chromebook purchase, Dr. Johns.
Real quickly, I'll pass this off to Dr. Gravel. We've used Lenovo Chromebooks for the last 10 years, actually to Mr. Manley. We've used Lenovo Chromebooks for the last 10 years with favorable experience. Mr. Manley will walk you through the details of our recommendation for purchase for the 2028 school class.
Yes, good evening. So it's that time of year again. We need to purchase approximately 1,500 Chromebooks for our incoming freshmen and other transfer students and the like. We are recommending that the board proceed with the purchase of these 1,500 Chromebooks, the same model that we purchased last year. They've been a really great and durable device. Trend lines on repairs are the same, and they are quite low. So that's very nice. We did go through a bidding process. We had 2 bidders, same as last year, but CDW was able to come in this year at a significantly lower price. We're saving approximately $74 per device on that, which is excellent. And so with that, it's pretty simple, pretty fast. I just recommend that you proceed next month with approving the purchase of the $1,500 Chromebooks to the tune of $429,000 at the consent agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Manley. Any questions or comments over here? No. Mr. Lucky, sorry.
So I noticed that the repairs are in the keyboard and the OS or Wi-Fi damage. Is it the physical Wi-Fi transmitters and stuff, or is it something with the software that?
Sometimes the Wi-Fi cards have needed to be replaced. They were trending up. That particular kind of repair was trending up in 21, 22. We're not really sure what was going on there. But that's since kind of subsided and gone back down. The repair numbers are down a little bit over last year, and then similar figures this year. Okay. We still got 6 months to go.
But in terms of the keyboards and all that, I mean, are these like physical issues with the Lenovo?
Physical damage, yeah,
primarily.
typically, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the keyboards, the Beck's Bookstore are contracted and they're doing the repairs for simple things like the keyboard swaps and things like that. They do them there pretty quickly. And then some other repairs, they ship those out and get them fixed.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? Okay, we'll see that on consent agenda, which is, I believe, March 11th.
March 11th.
Thank you, Mr. Manley. As always, appreciate it.
Good night.
Item 6.4 is our procedures for release of tenured, non-tenured, and part-time certified staff. Dr. Johns.
Thank you, Mr. Dowdy. I'll give a little context for this item before I hand it off to Ms. Romano. This is the annual process that we go through. It's very normal. All school districts are doing this and do this as to update the boards on the process that we take in the event that we must release tenured, non-tenured, and part-time certified staff. We are in the midst or kind of wrapping up one of the most difficult times in the school year, the busiest time in the school year for building principals and their administrative teams, and that we take the course requests and we determine how many sections of each course we must have to best fit the needs of all the students in the building. And that's called sectioning. And sectioning is really hard work because there's literally thousands and thousands of requests, and you're trying to match that up for the immediate needs, but also long-term needs and developing programs over time. And it's quite a balancing act because our resources, in this case, labor, is fixed because it's a large part of our budget. From sectioning, we go to what's called staffing, and we look at all the sections that have been created and determine how many staff are needed in order to cover all those sections. And that will ebb and flow on a regular basis based on maybe some interests that kids have that changed, or that will have different sizes in classes. And so that leaves us in a situation where we may have staff that don't teach the courses that our students have indicated they wanted to take, or if we have declining or shifting enrollment, that will have an impact as well. So that is why we go through this process every year of outlining the steps that we take, and this is highly governed by school code and our contract, and that's what Ms. Romano will walk you through.
Thank you. You're very thorough. So basically, this is something that we bring every year to the board as a reminder that if we need to engage in a reduction in force or honorable dismissal for our staff members, if we do not have positions for them, we do have to go through a process that's indicated by the Illinois School Code. And what that requires is for the board to take action on a resolution. And you can see some of the sample resolutions attached. Once the board takes action, we then let the staff member know officially of the honorable dismissal. We would send them a letter after the board meeting. Having said that, there is a whole process to make sure that the principals are in communication with the staff members to not be caught off guard. So there's an informal process of communication that is taking place as the staffing takes place and decisions are being made. But then again, the formal process comes to the board with a resolution for the board to approve. And then that includes also sending the staff members letters, delivering them in person by the instructional supervisor, and then sending them the letters via home certified mail return receipt. So that is the process that we follow. Depending on when the staffing is ready, you might be seeing this coming for action either at the March 11 board meeting, March 18, or April 8, the latest, because we do have to meet deadlines by April 15, and our board meeting before April 15 is April 8. So that would be the last time that we would be able to address this with the board.
So Thank you for that background, and that's usually board, just so we know. I think this one where we often will meet earlier for half an hour before that meeting when we get to that point, and we'll just coordinate that going forward.
Yes, we will.
Okay, fair enough. Any questions for Ms. Romano?
So nothing has changed in the process since last year?
The
It's
only,
exactly the same?
yeah, the only thing that has changed is the deadline. The Illinois School Code actually changed this year that in the past, it used to be 45 days before the end of the school year that we needed to let the staff know if they were going to be non-RIFed, a reduction in force or honorable dismiss. The Illinois School Code did change it to make it a blanket date of April 15 at this point. So moving forward, the deadline is April 15, but other than that, the process is the same of communication and board action.
Okay, thank you.
And we'll continue. It sounds as if you're already doing it. You're getting to the point where you're going to work with the affected staff members and make sure they have plenty of notice. This is obviously can be really difficult conversations. We don't have to tell you, you both know, but it's not easy. So we appreciate your endeavor with that. Any other questions or comments?
I would say, since we're talking about data all the time, and this has to do with enrollment fluctuations, I'm assuming there's less variability on the core subjects compared to other subjects, because unless enrollment grows, so that's why that's why I'm going in terms of data. Do we want to know, are we, mostly because we are letting some people go, sometimes this is associated to our planning and sometimes it's associated to the demographic changes. So if this is only associated with demographic changes, there's nothing we can do. But talking so much about shortage of teachers nationwide, and I'm not saying we need to keep anybody that should not be kept, but excuse me, we may be having some missed opportunities where if instead of hiring me, that I worked for 2 years and then there's no need for me any longer, you would have hired Michelle that may have a broader spectrum of classes that she can teach, even though the need of my first need that Michelle could cover, she could cover a need different when times change. And I see this all the time in school, teachers getting multiple certificates, one certificate, multiple endorsements. So back to planning, not that I don't want anybody to be fired. What I'm saying is, if we're going to have to, I should use the word fire, if we're going to be releasing some people from duties or reducing, but at the same time, we're going to be hiring people on other sides because we continually have needs. Maybe and this is not a criticism, it's a suggestion, as we look at our hiring processes, we try to hire in the most broader way. So we minimize these changes because this happens all the time. There are things that are out of control. But our hiring processes are mostly on our control. So that's why I'm talking about bringing data.
Yeah, there's just incredible amount of factors that each principal and her team are going through when they're making sectioning, staffing, and hiring decisions. We also have literally hundreds of coaching positions and sponsor positions that we're also trying to fill. So you're looking at so many different things you're trying to take care of. And so to your point, absolutely, anytime we can find someone with multiple certifications, that is, we're driven towards those individuals.
Thank you. Anything else, folks? Okay, so you'll just keep us apprised when this is going to come back our way. I appreciate it very much. Thank you. Item 6.5, strategic planning update. Dr. Johns.
Thank you. Carol is going to be presenting with the board. I just want to say she's done an excellent job of navigating the strategic planning process for the district. It feels trite to say that the process is highly iterative, but it is. There's no other way of saying it. And we're about at a midpoint in which the data, as you saw, the 26 pages of data has now been distilled down into some high level themes or areas of focus. And then we'll take another cycle back through the stakeholder groups, and that's the core planning team and the design team, to take a kind of a different perspective on the work that they've already done so that we can start to turn this into objectives and more tactical elements. So to give us an update on where we're at, particularly with the themes, Carol's going to walk through the work that all our stakeholders have been working on for a couple months now.
Okay, thank you so much. So as you know, the strategic planning process is really 6 steps. Currently, the district is between step 3 and 4, having completed the research and planning. So the district first provided a vast amount of information to our colleagues at CISO, data, and gave them the opportunity to learn as much as possible as they could about the district. And that they took that information and that gathered and created online surveys that we used with students, families, staff members, community members, and that informed the questions that they used as part of the engagement process. The plan development stage was completed earlier this month. The core planning team and the design teams met early in February. So the core planning team spent 2 days working. Members participated in several activities and workshops that built upon each other, and they included data review, environmental scans, creation of a practical vision for the plan, and identifying underlying barriers that may prevent the attainment of the vision. That all culminated in the development of strategic direction and priority outcomes the district should focus on in the next 3 to 5 years. The design team, made up of school and district leaders, reviewed the massive amount of work that was completed by the core planning team. They looked at the many initiatives, as you know, happening in the district. We talked about many of those tonight, with the many initiatives happening in the district concurrently. And the design team was really charged with aligning those focus areas with all of those initiatives and refining the priority actions to ensure that they were really high level, achievable, and measurable. So the design team identified insights, themes, and language that upheld the work of the core planning team, but kept actions at the high level, focusing on overall concepts and directions rather than specific solutions, which will come later. So based on all of that data and the work of the groups, there are 4 draft strategic focus areas that were identified. You'll notice there are many overlapping themes to what you have heard in reports, many things that you heard tonight, things that you heard from the culture and climate teams and the educational service team over the last year. I'd like to point out that the teams, that both the core planning team and the design team talked a lot about finance. They talked a lot about communications. And while you don't see any focus areas that are specific to those departments right now, we do know that those 2 things will be woven throughout the plan. The core planning and design teams are currently reviewing and refining the information as part of these focus areas, the purpose statements, and then some of the priority areas that are under that. And they're reviewing them and refining them before we take them out to the broader community for their feedback. As Dr. John says, the iterative process focuses on honoring the intent, ensuring transparency, and creating ownership. So what are our next steps? In March, which I realized is Friday. So probably next week, March, the core planning teams and the design team, as I said, they were reviewing all of the information. So we will be developing a survey based on that information to gauge the community's reaction to what was developed by the teams, to make sure that we got everything, that there wasn't anything that we were missing. We had, as a reminder, we had over 1,200 people that completed surveys last fall. And we want to make sure that the community really sees their answers to those questions in this plan. Then on April 2nd, the design team and the core planning team will be coming together to review the data from the community survey and to also have deeper conversations about the work that was done with both teams to revise that roadmap. In May, members of the core planning team and the design team will come in front of you and to present the strategic roadmap. That'll be on May 13th, and we hope to ask you to adopt the strategic plan on May 28th.
So thank you, Ms. Smith.
Mhm.
Much appreciated, all the leadership. And I know there are lots of folks, I think, in this room as well as all over the place who've been incredibly helpful all the way through our community. So thank you for continuing to drive this and map out our next steps.
The teams have been fantastic.
Well, we appreciate that. And it's a huge, important part. And it's so nice. A couple years after the pandemic was consuming us, to be working on something that's looking so forward and so holistically for our district is wonderful to see. So in terms of board members, we can, if you want to share some thoughts tonight, that's fine. But this is also, as Ms. Smith said, iterative. So if you have other thoughts that pop into mind as you mull this over the coming weeks, then please pass those along. And we'll make sure those all get fed to you as well. Ultimately, it's going to come before us, so we need to be all comfortable with it. But we'll continue that process with you. So I'll just go, Ms. Mullenbeck, anything you want to share at this point? Again, you can continue sharing afterward too.
Okay. I know that it was Herculean to try to pull together all these different projects that the district has worked on in the past couple of years to try to, suss out what these major issues are. But I don't mean to make more work, but I think it could be helpful. And you may
Here it
already
comes.
do I
Yeah.
need something you've already done? Something you've already done. But like,
Okay.
for example, for me, in preparing for tonight's meeting, I thought it was really interesting to go back and look, for example, at what the curriculum groups were doing and how in each of their presentations, their summaries, they talked about the strategic connection that they were addressing with their programming. And if you look at those strategic connections, they sound a lot like, things that are in the draft that you've presented tonight.
Mhm.
And I don't know if there's a way, or again, maybe just to help me understand how to map this in my own mind of how this has all come together. Like, that the four big buckets that you have, how does it connect to the curriculum project? How does it connect to what we identified as important in the curriculum project? How is that being reflected in the strategic plan? What we identified was important in the culture study, how is that being reflected in the strategic plan? I really am kind of thinking of it as almost as mapping, because you get these core concepts, a lot of them overlap, a lot of them are very similar, or just slightly different ways of saying or looking at the same concept. They're all going to come together in this one big strategic plan. How can we show people that all the work that you did, basically, that this is the culmination of not just this project, but all of these projects, and they've all come, that you've taken all of that material and distilled it down to 4 buckets.
Well, I hope that that is coming through, and it will be something that we communicate. I mean, the core planning team spent almost the entire first day looking at all of that data from those different areas, not necessarily the curriculum development that has been separate, but the culture and climate. They've looked at communication surveys, they've looked at audits, they've looked at other data from the district. And I think that's why we have come up with these 4 buckets, because and I think this is a wonderful thing, is that we are speaking the same language. We are aligned with other initiatives that are happening in the district. So to your point, yes, we need to make sure that we communicate that to our community. And I think it will be with the final product will definitely have those connections. And I don't know if Dr. Johns wants to add something.
Yeah, I'm eager to jump in on this one. So Sandy, I think I appreciate your question, because it has been a source of confusion for some people this year as we've gone through the strategic planning process. As you've heard, for the past year and a half, we have all this work going on. Does strategic planning mean we stop all of that? No. What it really means is, in many ways, is we're confirming the work that we already have going with all these points of work that are going on, and we're confirming that, yes, we're on the right track. So you think of some of the things you've heard about pathways, and we've done a lot of work on that this year. What we're doing, what you see in the first of the themes or the goal areas, is a confirmation that, yes, all those stakeholders say pathways work is the right work. And so now we're going to be able to line it up almost in a roadmap. It will be a roadmap, but you'll see all the different projects within our objectives. So we'll have an objective maybe under the flexible pathways for academic pursuits, and we'll have underneath that the objectives and the activities that we're doing to achieve it. In a perfect world, we'll have those identified with a little code in some way, so that as we're doing a presentation or in our memos, we would say, just like when we're pointing out a policy that's implicated by something we have in a memo, this is related to strategic plan outcome A, B, C, or D. So it starts to bring everything together, and you can see how it works. I've got a picture in my office, a drawing. It looks like a bowl of spaghetti, but it's taking all this work that we have going on, and there's great through lines to everything that's coming out of the strategic planning. It's uncanny how much of all the ongoing work is really coming together underneath the umbrella.
I do think that, as you both say, it does confirm everything, right? I mean, none of this is new. This is stuff we've been hearing from students, teachers, staff, the community for years. This is what they want, and now it's all going to be in the strategic plan, which is great. That it's all come together. We love it when a plan comes together, right? Exactly. I think it's, like I said, a huge project. And I just would like everyone to feel like it's not like this was just another way of skinning this cat. This was taking all of that and bringing it home.
I think that the narrative that will probably accompany the strategic plan, which will have to, the temptation would be write a tome, and that's actually not helpful. But it would have to reflect some of the work that's gone into this and the foundational parts to bring us to this point. So we have the umbrella from which we can derive things going forward. Other comments or questions?
No, I was just going to add that this mind map would be tremendously helpful to reporting on the good work that's already been done in these areas.
Yep.
So we're building upon it and then reporting on it afterwards as the strategic plan is in place and now we're executing on it.
Yep.
Because then it's easier to amend as the next, I'm already looking at 5 years from now, the next strategic plan, which will
Bite
be.
your tongue, sir.
It'll be easier.
Yeah.
It is.
I think this actually goes to something Pete was talking about and the curriculum people were talking about. When you have the GBS and GBN people realizing, hey, you know what? It doesn't matter whether the kids are north or south of Willow. They kind of want the same thing.
Right.
And so to get everybody under the same umbrella, I mean, part of it is we need this because we've been so separate camps for so long. You think, oh, it's so different. It ain't that different, that they generally want this, they want their kids to be successful. And so having this umbrella to help them know that they're all being under the rein together, I don't know, I'm ruining that metaphor, but whatever.
We got the point. All right, that's good. Over here.
I think it's great. I'll go back to Sandy's point on a different way. And I'm thinking about the average parent, I'm thinking about a parent, not necessarily the average parent, that thinks when I went to school, all I thought about was taking classes, getting my degree, and going to college. And I see all these things, and it's like, how does that fit? And I'm not supporting that train of thought. I'm thinking many people in our district will look at this and be like, what is this? All right. And you are in communication. So part of the goal is not only to have a solid strategic plan, is to be able to sell it on a way that people can embrace it, not just people that participated. Because the last thing we want is to have a parade of people coming here saying that we're trying to indoctrinate their children and the logic things that you see on the news everywhere. And you frown, you're looking weirdly, but I don't remember if you were here during the pandemic. We will get a parade for something if somebody just simply start putting things on the Facebook group. So I'm not saying I'm on this side of the spectrum in terms of what do I feel or how do I think about these things, but we may have to do some legwork to, like what Mr. Bridak says all the time. There's a reason why we want sense of belonging, because we want them to be engaged. We want them to be learning. We want them to be successful in what they're doing. There are tons of reasons for everything that we do here. Similar to what, Sandy, you are saying in terms of connecting the map, we may have to do some legwork on explaining how education in the 2000s or 2020 is different than education in the 2000s, which is different to education in the 1980s. And it's better. I'm not saying we teach better math or not. Maybe we teach math at the same level, but we are paying attention to things that we weren't paying attention in the past. And all these things are spelled here. I just don't want people to go on the wrong way. You know, sometimes, many times a good idea goes bad, not because the idea is not good, but because people don't know how to interpret or to use the idea. So I don't know, maybe it's mapping, maybe some longer preamble that explains how the intent of this, something that can help us sell the idea. Maybe it's already in the planning, I don't know, but I think you're putting a lot of work, a lot of people are working into this. The product looks good. I just want us, when we go live with this, you know, to have most people excited about it and to limit the ability of, there's always somebody who's going to complain, and we shouldn't do things just to avoid people that don't complain. But
We can guarantee that. Yeah.
well, the other point to that point, and I love it as well, it's funny because I'm making all these points on things that are the opposite of the way I think, okay? But when I look at, yeah, I had too many times, unfortunately. When I look at the yellow, the second yellow one, the culture and climate in the district, that's great. But I'd be careful in the way we spell the purpose of statement. Again, I don't want to give people the word A or the word B that people are going to come and hey, I told you, your teachers are trying to blah. You know, and it's sad. You read on Facebook, not in school, you read about politics, you read about local, you know, everywhere. And this is such a great idea that it should be put on a way that we don't allow, we minimize this kind of interpretation. Since when it's bad to have everybody to feel okay where they are, right? So that's just my comment. I applaud, this is great, looks great. I just want us to be successful from day one.
Thank you. Anything you want to add to that?
Just one note on that. And again, it looks awesome. I love it. We talked, I think, during the process about how we present this to the community of those who have kids at the school and those who don't. And I think maybe I mentioned this, but there was a pretty significant tax increase that happened in this neighborhood this year. I don't know if you all are aware or not. Very significant, like probably most significant spend in maybe, I don't know, 10, 15 years. Yeah. So I'm just like making everybody aware of that because a lot of those families don't have kids in school here anymore. And I think it's just important that we highlight all of the value that this is bringing to the community for current and future families. So
I think that's important sensitivity. To build on some of these points, and I've shared this, I don't want to disconnect the top bar from the 4 columns underneath. This is an addition to. Actually, the columns, the architectural on here, are supporting that bar.
Yeah.
That bar is everything.
Yep.
And to points here, it's very simple. We send our kids here, we move here, we pay taxes because we want the best education broadly defined for our kids. And these are all foundational supports, an engaged community, a welcoming community, a place where classroom experiences engage and bring people together and kids want to learn. It's all about learning and growing. And if we keep that simple, and you're the communication specialist, so I don't need to tell you this, that simple purpose, which someone who's a community member and is an octogenarian or somebody who's got kids in the school all understand and embrace.
Right.
All of this is foundational. This is why we have a strategic plan. It's all to achieve the big bar here. And that's why we think through our kids' experiences in the classroom. That's why we have all of this use of data now so that we can intervene earlier so that our kids get the supports. Often those needs for supports, those needs are transient.
Yeah.
And that's wonderful because we can address them earlier and we find ways to have a community that's engaged. So kids wake up and they know school. They say, oh my gosh, I'm going to school. I'm so excited to be there. And I really like this class and I'm learning so much and so forth. I could go on, but to me, this is wonderful work, but for explaining it to people, the simplicity hasn't changed of our purpose. It's how we get there in an organized way, drawing on a map of work of the last few years coming out of a pandemic. So I think this is great. We can tie this all together it's much easier for me to just say this, and I know it's harder to do it. But I think we can draw it all together, and that will keep it simple and understandable. So we don't really worry about marketing. It's almost reaffirming the same values that people moved to this community 50 years ago had, just differently defined as we evolve.
I feel like maybe you were a fly on the wall in this room when we were having those conversations because
No, I'm just atrophying in various ways.
the core
but-
planning team was very, very adamant when these strategic focus areas came up and they looked around the room at all of the paper and they said, wait a minute, time out. We need to anchor this all in that top bar. And so it was a very deliberate conversation
Good.
after so much of the work had already been done to ensure that that was on the top.
It's the center of what we do.
Absolutely.
And we just never lose focus on that. So, any other thoughts? Otherwise, I mentioned this is iterative. So if things come to mind, don't wait. When do you next see us officially?
March 11th.
For the strategic? What's the next? I just forgot your chart. What's your strategic plan next?
Well,
strategic
in
plan
March,
thing?
we're talking to, in March, we go back out to the community. We may do a small update probably in the last meeting, the second meeting in March. So
Okay, that's fine.
Because they're 2 in a row.
I would just say, and I've mentioned this, Dr. Johns, do keep us informed. You go, this is
Yes.
a great pithy presentation. Really appreciate it. And we want to make sure that we're giving our feedback because ultimately we're the ones who are going to have to say yay.
Right.
And you want it to be an easy 7-0 yay, but we just, we have thoughts up here. So.
Right, and for our March presentation, just because we have those two board meetings so close together, we'll have to see where we land with getting the information back from the community. I would hate to bring you a report that was
totally fine. We obviously
complete.
It's all good to just keep it going. Okay, thank you very, very much.
Bruce, in that sense, I'm sorry, to Carol's point, it may not be bad to wait until they have meetings because right now it's like we're cutting.
Oh, I
in the
agree
middle
with
of the
that. Oh, I
process.
agree.
Let
Yeah.
them eat.
If you told me, if you said early April, whatever, I just want to make sure we don't see something in May, which I know you're not intending.
No, we will
because it's
come
better to
back
keep
to
this
at
going.
least
Yeah,
once,
very good point.
probably twice before that May meeting,
Okay,
even if it's just a quick
thank you.
update.
Wonderful. Awesome. All right, great work. Item 7, our agenda's review of our meeting. We had, as always, great reports really from our schools and from our superintendent and all the wonderful things our students are doing across the district. We approved our consent agenda. We had a very thorough discussion on curriculum reports, but heard from across the spectrum of all the things that are happening, which is always wonderful to talk about that. We had our instructional materials textbook changes will come back on consent, as will the Chromebook purchase of the third item. We talked about the releases procedures as we do every year, and those will be coming back in one of the next 3 meetings. And finally, we had our strategic planning update. Item 8, possible topics for future board meetings. Please share those with me or Dr. Johns if you have any. And then item 9, we do have a closed session tonight. So I'll entertain a motion to consider the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees of the public body or legal counsel for the public body, including hearing testimony on a complaint lodged against an employee of the public body or against legal counsel for the public body to determine the validity. Collective negotiating matters between the public body and its employees or their representatives, or deliberations concerning salary schedules for one or more classes of employees, and litigation when an action against, affecting, or on behalf of the particular public body has been filed and is pending before a court or administrative tribunal, or when the public body finds that an action is probable or imminent, in which case the basis for the finding shall be recorded and entered into the minutes of the closed meeting pursuant to sections 2C, 1, 2, and 11 of the Open Meetings Act.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 7-0.
Let's take 8 minutes to 9:30 and we'll
so it doesn't get water.
And Mr. Dowdy, we are back.
Item 10 on our agenda is adjournment. Entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Let's go.
Opposed? Motion carries 6-0. We're
Thank
adjourned
you.
10:35.